Hi everyone, my name is Ryan Buell and I'm a professor in the Technology and Operations Management Unit at Harvard Business School. Over the last year and a half, we've learned a ton about how we can better engage students online. And a couple of weeks ago, I recorded a video for my colleagues at HBS and for our IT group, just sharing some of the technology that we use to engage students that my colleagues and I have discovered over the last year and a half. So huge shout out to my colleagues and friends, Francis Frei and Willy, Shih, who have been thought partners in this whole process. Francis encouraged me to share this video more broadly, so I've edited out some of the specific student information in the hopes that this video will be helpful to others around the world who are trying to figure out how to better engage students online. I think there's a world of possibility here, and I can't wait to share what we've learned with you. So the biggest revelation, or the biggest thing that's different from where we started to where we are now, is that we can now allow for quick switching between kind of cameras, our boards, slides that we might want to show. This is, by the way, the chaos that I am surrounded by right now. This is what my office looks like right now. I wanted to show you just sort of a brief behind the scenes of how we can actually use this technology to be able to engage students in a more compelling and better way. So the first thing that I want to share that I think is a really important component of the technology that I use is an ATEM Mini. So an ATEM Mini is a 4-channel production switcher. It's what allows me to go from kind of front camera to boards to a back camera if I want to, and back very, very quickly. It facilitates switching between views so you can show students quickly different things. It allows you to do picture-in-picture. So if I'm boarding, right, you can see me up here in the corner, but I can do boarding on my iPad. It also facilitates these lower third graphics that we see on television, but I find that actually these lower third graphics can be really useful in case discussions, because if you ask students a question and you put the question up at the bottom, it's kind of like a presidential debate. They stay on task and they're much more likely to answer the question that you've asked. You want to use them all the time, obviously, but for some of the main sort of structural questions that you're asking in a teaching plan, it can be a useful and productive thing to do. The way that I'm able to do this easily is with this piece of technology. It's called an ATEM Mini, and it's from a company called Blackmagic Design. So it's an HDMI 4-channel production switcher, and you can see the buttons 1, 2, 3, 4. If I punch on those different buttons, it allows me to switch the view that people are seeing. Now, what's different about this is that instead of using the share screen button that so many people use in Zoom when they're teaching, which basically hijacks the student's view, it pulls them away from gallery mode, it makes your screen full screen, it makes it hard for them to see each other, which undermines the ability for us to do a real meaningful case discussion. In this particular approach, we actually are allowing the students to direct their own experience. And so that's, I think, a valuable, meaningful difference. So you want to tell students, look, I'm not going to be hijacking your screen. What you want to do is you want to use the view button that's in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. You can switch between gallery view and speaker view. It allows you to direct your own experience so that you can see me, you can see your classmates, and we can have one discussion. And I find that's really useful. It empowers students to look at who and what they want when they want to look at it, and that's a really powerful and useful thing. Now, the way that I'm able to fluidly switch between scenes so easily without it being hugely distracting to me is that I use something called an Elgato StreamDeck. So this is the one that I'm using to switch. This is just a still picture of it so that I can show it to you in some of the features. Basically, a StreamDeck has a StreamDeck XL, this is the big one that they have, has 32 buttons. You can program the buttons however you want, and you can even apply the graphics and the labels, whatever graphics and labels that you want to apply to the StreamDeck so that you can remember what each button does. But you can see this particular StreamDeck that I'm using, it allows me to do a bunch of different things. So first, it's got some zoom functionality. So for example, in the top left, if I punch that button, gallery speaker, I've programmed in the shortcut that allows me to switch what's on my screen from gallery to speaker view, which is useful for me. Or gallery next, gallery previous. I can page, if I've got more than 49 students in a class, I can quickly page around and look at everybody very, very quickly. Mute button, participant list, chat window, I can control all that stuff with my StreamDeck which makes it really, really easy. So for example, you'll see here, I'm just turning on and off the chat button, or here I'm turning on and off the participants list. And what's nice about this is, if I usually have my participants list off to the left-hand side. I usually have my my chat window over on the right-hand side. And what's cool is that once you set them, if you turn them on or off with your Stream Deck, and I'm just punching the buttons, they always appear in the same place, which is so wonderful. Whereas if you're doing it manually, you often have to drag them around. If you share your screen, everything gets jostled. This way, everything is much more streamlined and straightforward. Beyond that, you can use Stream Decks to control other things. So for example, I use Stream Decks to control my lighting. So if I hit the key light button, I can turn the lights off or on myself. I don't usually do that during class, but it makes it really, really easy to set up for class. I can use it to control the different scenes. So right now you're looking at some of my slides, but if I push the front camera, you can see the front camera. If I push my boards, you can see my boards. And the other thing is I can use it to control these lower third graphics, because I've been able to program that into the system. And so this is, I think, a really important thing. Stream Decks provide shortcuts to allow you to control everything. And in fact, I find these to be so valuable that I actually have 3 in my setup. I'll take away the lower third graphic, and I'll show you what all of them do just so you have a sense. But these are a really, really, really powerful tool. And then beyond that, you can use the Stream Decks to control your ATEM Mini. So that's how I'm able to have buttons that allow me let me see if I can set this up so you can see it quickly. So this is, I'm going to switch to the camera in my iPad so you can see, here's the Stream Deck that I have. This is the one that controls my zoom and controls everything. If I just hit front, for example, it's going to put up the front view. If I go back to boards, it's going to go back to my iPad camera. If I go here, it'll go back to my slides. I can go to the back camera. It's just pushing these various buttons allow me very quickly and seamlessly to be able to switch between views, which is a really useful and powerful thing. But to do that, to make the Stream Deck control your ATEM Mini, to allow it to sort of switch different things, you want to use an app called Companion. There's a piece of software called Companion that if you set it up, your Stream Deck can actually talk to the ATEM Mini, and you can in fact program macros into your ATEM Mini to allow it to do lots of things, right? Like turn on and off these lower third graphics. Or for example, when I go to my boards, I don't just go to the boards channel, I pop myself up into a picture-in-picture window. And so I've programmed macros that when I jab the buttons on my Stream Deck, I can go very seamlessly, right? From one view to another, to another, to another. And it allows us to have a seamless conversation. You would never switch that fast in practice, but it allows us to have a seamless conversation where your mind isn't taken up by trying to very quickly manually do all that stuff. When I started out, I was manually doing it. Going to Stream Decks and using macros and using the Companion software allows it to be just a more seamless and comfortable process, which I think is really useful. Another thing that's really nice about moving beyond just the one camera that you might have built into your computer, if you're using an ATEM Mini, you can have multiple cameras, right? And so I don't just have this one that's in front of me, I have one that's over my shoulder. Now that seems frivolous and crazy and a little silly right now, but the reason that I think it's actually very valuable is, if I'm having a real case discussion, what I can do is, if a student is talking, I can pull up that student in the full speaker view on the screen in front of me, and I can show the back camera. So that student's face is in this screen. The students are seeing me paying attention to what the other student is saying, and it's a really useful way to make it feel like we're in the same place together. To facilitate this, so I've got a couple of different kinds of cameras that I've tried. The best camera that I've found is the one that I have here in the front. This is a Sony ZV-1 camera. It's a relatively new camera. It's got a very high picture quality. I think it's a mirrorless design. It was designed originally for video bloggers, and so it's basically a camcorder and still photography camera in one. But what's really nice is it's got a sharp picture, it adjusts its focus quickly, and it's configurable. So you can take all of the gobbledygook off of the monitor display so that you just get a nice clear picture. It also doesn't overheat. I've had it running for hours and hours and hours on end while I've taught, and I've never ever had a problem with that camera. camera. That's not the camera that I started with though. The one that I have that's back here over my shoulder is actually a Canon Vixia HV30. If that seems like a random choice, it's absolutely a random choice. It's a camcorder that we bought 11 years ago when our daughter was born, and it turned out it has an HDMI output on it. So if you are going to be using an ATEM Mini, you need cameras that have HDMI outputs on them. You won't be able to use the cameras that are built into your computers. You won't be able to use, even if you have a nice webcam, you won't be able to do that. So you'll have to get camcorders or cameras that have HDMI outputs. The Sony ZV-1 that I talked about and this Canon Vixia HV30, they do have HDMI outputs. And I'll just say the Vixia HV30, the Canon Vixia HV30, we bought it 11 years ago. It's really old technology, but as you can see, there's an HDMI output. You can see the cable coming out of it. And I've just clamped it into our wall so that it's a nice stationary camera. I bought another one, a second one on eBay for $30, right? These are not very sought after because they're not modern technology, but you can get backups really, really cheaply and they work quite well, right? I mean, you can see the quality of the picture is pretty good. And so we have that as an opportunity for ourselves, I suppose. Beyond this, I wanted to say that I think something that's really useful and valuable beyond having front and back cameras is having separate Zoom and content computers. It can really, really improve your performance. So lots of people just use one computer when they're teaching a class, and it's the computer that they use to run their slides. It's the computer that they use to run Zoom. And what I've actually found is that I don't think that's the best thing that we can do. I think better is when you have separate content computers and Zoom computers. And so in my setup, and just going back to the chaos picture here, I have one computer that's running content for me. That's a MacBook Pro. And I have a second computer that's running Zoom for me. That's a Mac Mini, and it's connected to an Apple Cinema display, which turns out an Apple Cinema display is a really good display for us to use for Zoom because it's got its own graphics processing built into it. And so that means that Zoom, your processor on your computer doesn't have to work as hard because all of the graphics work is being done on the display itself. Newer displays, if you get a 4K or a 5K display, might zap a lot of the capacity of your processor, and it can make your video seem laggy. It can make it really uncomfortable. If you are trying to offload as much of the work as possible so that your processor that's running Zoom just has to focus on Zoom, that will make everything go so much more smoothly. Now, to run this content computer, I have a second Elgato StreamDeck XL that I can use to do lots of different things. And what I've done is I've programmed buttons on that to be able to allow me to pull up content that I use rather regularly. So for example, if I want to pull up an Excel spreadsheet, I just punch a button and it will pull up the Excel spreadsheet. It loads it and it opens up Excel full screen so students can see it. We can very quickly, I can go over to the computer and adjust numbers. And that is a really, really simple thing to do. If I want to use a video case, I can just hit a button and I can load up the video case. Looks like HBP is a little slow right now. I bet it'll show up in just a second. So this should be the Breakfast at the Paramount case when it does come up. So it's connected to, there we go, it's connected to the internet. So it went out to the internet, it pulled down this web page, which is basically the Breakfast at the Paramount case. And if I want, I can scroll through the case. I can play with different content. So for example, we've got a queuing calculator here so that people can engage in real-time calculations, and we can learn about queuing. So anything that's on the internet, you have immediate access to, which is really powerful. Something I found that's a nice way to engage students, there's a website called wheelofnames.com. And so I created a wheel of names for MSO. These were all the students that I had in one of my sections in MSO last year. And if I hit the spin button, it spins and it will randomly pick a student that we can cold call, right? So it's a nice way to take cold calls and make them feel a little more fun, a little bit more engaging. And that's I think a useful thing for us to be able to do. The other thing that is nice is that you can use this also, the content computer, to just show slides. And so if I just want to show slides, I have the ability to do that. Similarly, if I want to just show video, I can do that too. And so just take a look at this. I'll take myself out of picture-in-picture and I can show you full screen video. won't keep that going on and on. But what's nice is we can very seamlessly move from web content to slides to Excel and different applications, and then to things like full screen video very quickly. I tend to just embed my full screen video in a slide presentation, and then I just use a clicker to advance my way through the presentation. It allows me, though, to very quickly and seamlessly direct the experience, which makes things really good for students. Now, this brings us to another little bit of magic, which is managing audio. Because you've heard two different sources of audio. One source of audio you've been hearing throughout this is coming from this, it's hard to point to it, this wireless lav microphone that I have. This is a Sennheiser EW100 wireless lav mic system. So what it allows me to do is, I've got a little bit of a battery pack here. It allows me to just move around seamlessly. I can spin around. I'm usually pretty animated when I teach, so I have the ability to move and my voice doesn't change very much. I found that to be better than having a corded system. I've also experimented with different things, having a condenser mic or using earbuds like AirPod Pros to be able to amplify my voice. Those don't work as well. So condenser microphones, the challenge with that is that they sound really good, especially if you're talking right into them. But then you've got like a big Larry King Live condenser microphone right in front of you, but they pick up all sounds in your house, right? So right through the floor, if someone's banging around upstairs, they'll pick up that sound because they've got an omnidirectional pickup pattern. So I found that lav mics are better. By the way, Bluetooth earbuds like AirPod Pros, they work great for hearing students. And in fact, I do use AirPod Pros to listen to students, but I use something separate to amplify my voice because I found that the quality of Bluetooth audio isn't great when broadcast across Zoom. So your voice winds up sounding like like it's coming out of an old Edison phonograph. And also Bluetooth is a little bit slow. So there's latency. So your mouth moves and the sound gets to the students later. If you use a wireless lav mic system, it allows you to have the freedom of motion like the Sennheiser one, but also much higher quality audio that sounds good to the students. Now, the other little bit of hocus pocus here is I had to figure out how was it that I was going to be able to show video and allow you to hear the sound from that video, but also be able to speak and allow you to hear me speaking. And the way that I've been able to achieve that is I take the audio from my microphone and the audio from my content computer, and I mix them together using this Behringer UPHORIA UMC22 two-channel audio mixer. So you can see on the left is the input from my wireless lav mic. On the right there is the input right from my computer. I've been able to blend the sound together, and then I don't have to think about audio when I'm teaching. If I show a video, students will be able to hear it. I sometimes use the mute on my microphone belt pack just if I want to talk to my family in the next room while they're watching a video so they don't hear me and I don't interrupt the sound. It just makes things a little bit smoother. But because I can actually use this mixer to mix between the two audio channels, I never have to think about audio. The other component that I mentioned is that when I'm actually teaching, which this isn't teaching because I'm not engaging with students, but when I'm engaging with students, I need to hear what they're saying. And the way that I do that is I use AirPod Pros. Now, what I've found about AirPod Pros is they are comfortable, they are customizable to make sure that they fit in your ears. The sound quality is quite good. You have the ability to turn up and down the volume very seamlessly. So if someone's quiet, you can turn up the volume and it's easy. The downside of them is that the battery life isn't great on them. And so my workaround for this is that I got myself two pairs of AirPod Pros. I always have one that's plugged in and running and charging while the other one is in my ears. And so if I'm teaching two sections of a class, when I'm done teaching, I will take out the AirPod Pros. I'll put one set in the cradle. I'll take out the fresh set. I'll put those on. I'll pair them with my Zoom computer, and then I'm ready to go. Similarly, I have the same setup where I use rechargeable batteries for my wireless lav mic, and I'm always between sections swapping from one battery set to another. And I've found that that's been a really, really reliable way to ensure that I've always got reliable audio, both to hear students and to be able to communicate with students, which is very, very important. So another thing that I found that's useful is I found solutions for both boarding and for polls. And the solution that I use to do this is I have a 12.9-inch Apple iPad Pro. It's an old Apple iPad Pro, but it turns out it works out really well. I can there's an adapter that I use to take the output, the lightning output from the iPad Pro, and it converts it over to HDMI so that it can be fed into the ATEM Mini. And then that allows me to very quickly be able to board student ideas. I use, there's lots of different apps you can use for boarding. My favorite app is something called Scribble Together. And Scribble Together is awesome for lots of reasons. This is just lots of different class boards. Scribble Together is fantastic for lots of reasons, but my favorite thing about Scribble Together is that you have the ability to, I'll hide my, oops, let me see here. Try and hide my picture-in-picture here so that I can show you this cool thing. So you have this ability to be able to share a link to your boards. And what I do is I email myself a link to the boards, and then I push that link to the boards out in chat so that students have the ability in real time to be able to see what I'm writing on the boards. And so oftentimes, right, when we're doing board work, the students only get the opportunity to see the boards if we're sharing what's on our screen. But if you push the link out through chat, it can be a really powerful thing. And I tell students, look, just go to chat at the beginning of class. I'm pushing out a link to the boards right now. You'll be able to see them in real time. And basically it opens up a real-time window in their web browser so they can always look at the boards. So if students are sitting in a regular classroom, they can always see the chalkboard or the whiteboard. But online, they don't have that ability unless you use an app like Scribble Together that you just Google Scribble Together and you'll be able to find it. It's a great app. It works really, really well. It's got all of the functionality that you need. So for example, you have the ability to switch to different colors. You have a couple of different pen widths. You can color in figures, a couple of different ways to do erasing. They have a feature where if you want to highlight something, but you don't want to permanently highlight it, you have the ability to do that. You can also move content around. So it's got all the functionality I think you need, but it doesn't have much functionality that you don't need. And so I find it to be very, very useful. And it's got that sharing feature where you can share links, which is powerful. The other thing I wanted to share is that I have found that there's this great software package called Poll Everywhere. And Poll Everywhere is a great way if you want to get a straw poll vote from students on something A, B, C, D and get real-time graphics, or something that I have come to do is I will, if I have a protagonist in class, a guest in class, and I want to have the students ask questions, I say, submit your questions to the poll. And what I can do is on my iPad, I can see the questions that have come in from students. And better yet, with Poll Everywhere, students can log on and they can see what questions have been asked. They don't see who asked them, but they can see what questions have been asked, and they can vote each other's questions up and down. And that makes it really, really useful because then you get to ask, you get to call on the students whose questions are the most in demand by the section. So it's a great way to be able to improve engagement, but also to make sure that you're getting really the best quality discussion, that you're making the very best use of the time that you have with your students. Okay, so the last thing that I want to share is my green screen background. Now this was kind of an accident. I have a window behind me in my home office, and at first I thought that was terrible because when you have sun streaming in behind you, that's not very helpful. It turns you into a bit of a shadow. I installed blinds that didn't totally solve the problem. I put cardboard behind the blinds to really totally black out the sun. That solved the problem, but then I had blinds behind me, which wasn't the best looking thing. Then my daughter said, if you just take the cardboard and you cover it with green construction paper, like this, and here I've used a photography light, the cardboard, and some green construction paper, then you have the ability to put whatever you want in the background. You can do a green screen. So I was giving a presentation to the faculty a couple of months ago, and in my presentation I referenced an example from Federal Express, from FedEx. And when I mentioned FedEx, a FedEx truck came in the window behind me, and people were like, wow, how did you plan for FedEx to come in at that exact moment? It's just a green screen. And so I can put anything I want back there, right? So I can put fireworks if I want to, or if I want to go to Beacon Hill because I'm teaching a case on the Paramount, which is a diner there, or the train platform in Tokyo Station if we're teaching Trouble at Tessé, or Ranthambore, India if I'm teaching the Oberoi Hotels case. I can just hit a button and I can switch from background to background. I'll come back to Lexington now. The way this magic is accomplished is I have a MacBook Pro, another MacBook Pro that's sort of hiding under my desk. It's just running slides. It's just running slides. It's a slide presentation, and it's got the window overlaid, so you can see my window there. This is what it's looking like on the MacBook Pro right now. And then I have a second ATEM Mini that I'm using to key in the green screen behind me. The reason that I've done it that way is that if I switch from view to view, I only want the green screen to be picked up on my first camera, right? So I don't want things that are green to be green screened away on other cameras, right? Or for example, the leaves out the real window that's in front of me would be getting a strange background. And so I have this second ATEM Mini that I'm using for the green screen, and then I'm able to use a StreamDeck, a third StreamDeck, to be able to very quickly choose different backgrounds. So I use this for taking us when I'm engaging students or participants in an exec ed program. You know, let's go to the platform in Tokyo Station, or let's go to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and we'll talk about Commerce Bank, right? And I found that it's a little bit of extra graphical interest, and it's a way of turning this window behind me into a feature. And so I found that to be useful. And again, this is what it looks like in the office right now. If I turn the green screen off, this is what the slide looks like. And then when I key myself back in, now you can see me, and I've got this slide in the background, which works pretty nicely. So just a couple of other things that I have learned are useful. So one is these are Elgato Key Lights that I have, and what's nice about Elgato Key Lights is that they're made by the same company that makes the StreamDecks, and so your StreamDeck can actually control your lighting. Now, gamers and people that are doing online streaming will often do things where they'll make it change the temperature, the color, or the brightness. I haven't done anything that fancy. I just find that it's a really nice thing to be able to just walk into the office and to be able to turn my lights on so that we can start the conversation. But it's just one little thing that's, when I went to these, it made it a little bit quicker to be able to switch into classroom mode. Another thing that I use is I've got two clocks. I have an analog one and I have a digital one. The analog one was meant to kind of evoke the Aldrich classroom, where I have an analog one over my shoulder this way, I have the analog one over my shoulder this way, and for a while my brain was just sort of trained, as it always has been, to be able to read that clock quickly and calculate how much time is left in class. What I learned though was that that if you have a digital clock, I often use a digital countdown clock, this one here, to tell me how much time is left in the session. And I can actually look and see, am I on track for my discussion without having to do a bunch of extra math? And so I have both clocks where the digital one is counting down. Here in the example, it's actually showing the time, but I use it as a countdown timer so I know how much time is left in the session. And that way I always know where I am. And I found that to be very, very useful and valuable. Another thing that I have learned over time is useful is all of this technology throws off a lot of heat. When you think about the lights, the 3 different computers, 2 different cameras, 2 different ATEMs, and the audio technology, it throws off a lot of heat. And so I got a mini split air conditioning system, which is very, very quiet, but it allows it to stay cool in here. And it also keeps the technology cool. So it's been a nice feature that once I put it in, especially teaching through the hot summer in a room that didn't have air conditioning, was really painful and bad for the equipment. The mini split system has made a massive, massive difference. Something else is that my office has always had this whiteboard in it, or I installed it in here. It's a magnetic whiteboard. And what's nice about that is you can put your teaching plan up, or any notes or materials, boards that you want. And so you can see I've got my rundown sheet here for the last case that I taught, just kind of magneted to the board, and that's been a useful thing. Another thing was this rubber anti-stress mat. I have one on the floor that I just took out of our kitchen, but it makes a world of difference when you're teaching. If you're going to be standing for an hour and a half or 3 hours straight, to not have to stand on a hardwood floor or a concrete floor. The rubber anti-stress mat is nice. The other thing that's nice about the stress mat is that I always know if I've been moving around, I can center myself in the camera without being able to see it, because I can feel in my feet when I'm standing on that anti-stress mat. The final 2 things that I wanted to share, which are just really simple things, the device stand that I'm using to hold my iPad, I have a clamp-on shelf that I've put underneath it, which I found is really useful for holding case material. I also have this Pyle device stand, which you can just get on Amazon. Actually, I have two of them. One is holding my my iPad, my keyboard, and my trackpad for controlling the Zoom computer. The other is off to my left here with my water, calculator, copy of the case, some pens, things that I might need during class. And so I found that to be really useful, just to have things just so that I can very quickly access them during the discussion. So that's the rundown. That's the rundown of the technology that I'm using. And I just wanted to say as a final thing, if you need help, right, please reach out to me. Or if you have more ideas, please reach out to me. One of the things that's been so beautiful about this experience is we've all been innovating and we've all been learning from each other. And so I've learned so much from colleagues who have shared different bits of technology, different strategies with me. And I'd be grateful to continue to be the recipient of those things. I'm just sharing the things that I've learned so far, but would love to learn more. I know we've only just scratched the surface of what we can do with this technology. And so anyway, hope this has been helpful. Anytime I can help, please just reach out to me. All right, thanks so much.